Hello and welcome back to Oil Sketching Part 2, which I'm going to call the tricky bits. Creamy buttery oil paints delicious when they are squeezed out of the tube, but how often do you find that they don't behave as you want them to and lose their vibrancy and then tend to go towards a sort of brown colour or a muddy mess? Would you believe me if I told you that the way to avoid this problem is to have a plan? So hats off to you if you saw that I cleaned the palette knife each time and one brush is used for one tone, the dark, mid and light. So do you remember last time I talked about this sketch by Rembrandt and the principles of position, gesture, shape and light and shade? And then I mentioned he was a genius. Okay, so now it's our turn to sketch and we're faced with a blank piece of paper or canvas. In the next video, which is part of a live I did in Facebook, I'm going to show you how to start the sketch. Hello, so today I'm going to be sketching this little pot and the pear. And as I've been talking about sketching in the last few videos, I talked about the position, the gesture and the shapes, and also very importantly the light and the shade. And then I mentioned that because I'm oil sketching, there's the added complication of colour. So today I've mixed up my paints, as you can see here on the palette. It took me about half an hour to get the colours of the pot, the colours of the pear and the background all set up. So I'm ready to go. And the other thing I mentioned was that feeling when you've got a blank piece of paper in front of you and you've got to write something or paint something, and how sometimes that can be a little bit nerve-wracking. Well, firstly, see that I've prepared my paper and it's a slightly brown colour, so I'm not seeing a white piece of paper and it's not quite so intimidating. But also the fact is that I've put down immediately a mid-tone, which means that this is going to help me with my dark and my light. So the first thing I'm going to do is map out the picture, and I'm not going to worry too much about accuracy, but the first thing I am going to do is think about the position I want to have, or where I want the pear and the pot on on the piece of paper. So hopefully these two cameras will help you see what I'm going to do. So firstly, I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to decide where I want to put the object. So, and I usually take a little bit of burnt umber. So hopefully you can see my palette. So the top of the pear and the bottom of the pot. The bottom of the pear. Here. And the top of the pot. About here. So another thing I tend to do is think geometrically about my shape. So the pear is a lovely round, in parts it's lovely and round, but I'm trying to make straight lines because straight lines are then easier to correct. I'm also looking at this between the space between the pear and the pot, or the negative shape, which will also help me to position the pot. Okay, so more or less that's where, well, I can change it though. That's the beauty of oil paints, because I can move it around a bit, but I think more or less that's where I want my pieces to go on the paper. Although the gesture of the pear is more like, let me put it in. So it goes like that. It's curved. Ooh. Is it? So I'm going to play a little bit with that. Okay. Now the next part, what I'm going to start doing now is putting some of my dark tones, my shadows. So I'm going to take a bigger brush and so when I slightly close my eyes, the shadow and the shadow behind the pear, so the shadow going onto the box, the table, and the shadow I can see on this left side here of the pear is almost the same tone. So I'm almost losing the shape of the pear as I put both in. I'm just blocking in the shadow. And the same here. Similar. So I just want to get that in. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is get my background colour and the mid-tone yellow of my pear, and I'm going to start shaping the pear better. So get 2 clean brushes. Here we go. So you see how I can reshape the pear a bit? So you see how I can shape everything by using the background colour and the mid-tone colour in the pear. Okay, so I'm going to continue painting, and I will post the finish painting on the Flying Plum page when I finish. But what I wanted to convey today is that first moment when you put something down on your piece of paper or your canvas, and the fact that you can't make a mistake, because you can adjust it. You can always adjust what you're doing until you get it how you want. So I'm going to be adjusting the shape of the pear and most definitely this little pot as I keep going. So, and that is the beauty of oil paints. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen today. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them for me. And if you're interested in any of my oil painting courses, have a look at the website. I've left a link in the description. Thank you for watching,
Keep painting and see you next time.